Hey, that means we're gonna be having youth in your house today. I hope you're fine with it. But I mean, this is the first time I'm preaching in front of a cupboard. But nevertheless, it's so good to be with you guys. Man, we really miss you. Last week we asked you guys to send us a wave and say hi. We only had 2 people, Annika and Bonga, wave at us. So you 2 guys are awesome. I think I should give you guys a slab when we're back at youth. But won't you just try it again quickly? Take a moment, send us a WhatsApp, send us a wave, and just say hi. We would love to hear from you as we get started. And so I want to start by reading Psalm 32 and verse 7. And it says, "You are my hiding place. You preserve me from trouble. You surround," everybody say surround. "You surround me with songs of deliverance." I strongly believe that when we allow God to surround us daily, we position ourselves to receive what He has for us. And so tonight, the title of the message is Surrounded. Surrounded. Everybody say surrounded. And so the word surrounded simply means to be all around. Not all round, but be all around. I heard someone say, thank God. All right, so there's 3 points I want to share with us today. Number 1, something can change immediately. Something can change at once and instantly. I remember my brothers and I being quite competitive. We still kind of are, but we used to be very competitive when we played cricket outside together, and Dad would sometimes have to warn us and say, hey, stop it. And we would make sometimes quite a lot of noise fighting with each other. Maybe the neighbors could have heard, who knows? And many times you would stand there busy watching us, and then the next thing you just hear him, Tony, Samuel, Joshua, stop it. And we would know. But many times we weren't always listening to him, and we would carry on fighting. Not listening to him on purpose, but we were just so competitive. Until that moment came when you hear him shout, Timothy, let's go. And I think you know what that means, but man, there came some discipline. And immediately something would change within all of us. Like, we would start being well-behaved. Even the guys who didn't get the hiding would be well-behaved. I remember every time Josh and I got a hiding, Sam was on his his best behavior ever. And so when Sam did get a hiding those times, Josh and I would kind of be happy, because Sam wasn't often heard like Josh and I were, because we were a little bit more noisy than Sam. And so Sam would get a hiding, Josh would be like, yeah, guys, don't tell Sam. And so then you walk down the passage, and you just kind of hear this man negotiating the whole way. But the truth is, we needed discipline. We needed discipline immediately, because something needed to change. And so we need to be prepared, all of us, to make changes. And some of those changes need to be made immediately. So I was thinking about the 12 disciples, ordinary men living their own lives, doing their own thing, doing what they knew best. And, they were fishing. And but when we go and read Matthew chapter 4, so Jesus walks into the beach and he sees these men, and he sees Simon Peter, and he sees Andrew, and they're busy fishing and casting their nets, and he says, this is what he says in scripture: follow me and I'll make you fishers of men. This is what happens. They immediately left their nets and they followed him. So Jesus continues down the beach, and the next thing they come across James and John. Jesus says the same thing. He says, follow me, men. They drop what they were doing and they go after Jesus. This is why. Because when God calls us, He calls us immediately. He doesn't say, come just now or none now. All right. He calls us now. He wants us to be obedient now. You see, delayed obedience is disobedience. If mom says, go and clean your room, and you say you'll do it just now, that's delayed obedience. Delayed obedience is disobedience. And so they immediately surrounded themselves with Jesus. The result? Immediately, their destinies were changed forever. So they immediately surrounded themselves with Jesus, and the result, immediately their destinies were changed forever. And they were surrounded by Jesus. You see, in 1 Samuel 15:22, it says, obedience is better than sacrifice. Obedience is better than sacrifice. These men went after Jesus. In order to be surrounded by God, we have to be obedient to Him and His call. When I'm prepared to be in the presence of God, prepared to be surrounded by Him, things will need to change, and things will begin to change. So when Jesus walks into the scene, when Jesus appears, suddenly, immediately, something begins to happen. Point number 2, who are you surrounded by? You see, in our time that we're living in this world we're living in, man, there's a lot going on. And there could be some negative people and stuff, but you've got to know your surroundings. So despite what's going on around us, we can protect what's in us. Despite what's going on around us, we can protect what's in us. We know the scripture in 1 Corinthians 15:33, bad company corrupts good character. Just because someone has great stuff or has done well financially for themselves or has a great status or whatever it is, character is more important. Character is far more powerful than achievements, wealth, status, your great idea of ideal life or whatever it is. But we've got to be prepared. We've got to be aware and careful of our surroundings. Because if we're not, we can find ourselves in a very, very difficult situation. I remember thinking of this. I was in Texas in the USA a couple of years ago, and a friend dropped me off after being at the church at my host's house, and dropped me off, said goodbye, and I walked into the house, and the next thing I heard the dog bark, and I'm like, they don't have a dog. Then I see the tumble dry, and I'm like, that's not theirs. And so I walk back out, and as I walk out, I see my friend. I just turned the corner. I'm thinking, oh no, it's late now for me. But I don't know if you know this, but Texas, you don't mess with people in Texas. They got guns. It's Cowboy Valley. It's just crazy. And I quickly got out of there because I didn't know my surroundings. And so I found myself in a position that was quite scary. Thankfully, I ended up finding my place and I'm alive because I'm sitting here today. But just thinking about that, we've got to be so careful. You see, even the music we listen to, the people you listen to, just because it sounds good doesn't mean it's actually good. The movies you're watching, what are you watching? You shouldn't be watching movies with magic or demonic activity or horrors and so forth. You've got to watch what you're putting into your mind and your heart. You might not think it's bad, but it's bad. And what we surround ourselves with is what we end up living with. What we surround ourselves with is what we live with. We end up living with. You can't afford to contaminate your spirit. You've got to know your surroundings. We can't live in fear, but we've got to be wise. Young ladies, you shouldn't be walking on the streets alone at certain times of the day. You've got to be wise in today's time. You see, we know the story of Peter, like in Matthew chapter 26. And Peter loved Jesus. But Peter got to a point where he was a little bit overconfident and he kind of said, I will never deny you, Jesus. And we know the story. And when Peter found himself surrounded by people that didn't believe what he believed or didn't have the values or the encounters with God that he had had, when they asked and said, are you Peter? He said, no. And he ended up denying Jesus 3 times. But because the people surrounding him made him become someone he was not supposed to be. Sometimes we think, I don't deny Jesus, I never will. But if we're doing anything in our lives, saying anything, thinking things, watching things, or whatever it is, that is not who God is, we're actually denying Jesus. Because if we say we love Jesus, you've got to live like a child of God. Proverbs 13:20 says, whoever walks with the wise will become wise, but the companions of fools will suffer harm. In Luke chapter 19, we know the story of Zacchaeus. He was a little short guy. And Jesus is walking through Jericho. He just arrived. And there's so many people. But this little man, he's so short, he can't see. And what does he want to do? He's a tax collector. He's rich. He kind of steals. He's not the best type of man. Kind of referred to as a sinner. But he decides to climb up on a tree just so that he can try and see Jesus. And the next thing, Jesus sees him in the tree and says, come down. And he comes down and basically says, I'm staying with you tonight. And when I think about this story, despite his surrounding and his difficulty and his position to see Jesus, he made a way that he could see Jesus. And this, with Jesus coming to stay with him, he got saved, and his whole family got saved because of something that he was willing to do. His curiosity actually saved him. But despite his surrounding and his circumstances, he made a way that he could be surrounded by Jesus, that he could be in the presence of Jesus. Come on. Maybe you and I need to start climbing some trees. But more than anything, you've got a desire to be surrounded by Jesus. Write this down as a note. I want you to go and read it sometime. Psalm 139, verse 5 to 7. Psalm 139, verse 5 to 7. Go and read it in your own time. Such a powerful scripture. So despite your current challenge, he will surround you. It may look like I'm surrounded, but I know that I'm surrounded by Jesus. And point number 3, who is surrounded by you? The previous point we just said was, who are you surrounded by? Now we're going to talk about who is surrounded by you. So when you walk into the room, what do you bring? What do people see? And I'm not talking about your fire of your good looks. I'm talking about the fire of God inside of you. What happens when you walk into the room? What do people see? Can they see the fire of God burning inside of you? I know some of you want to be noticed for your looks and stuff. Let me just say, you are good looking. All right, but when we walk into the room or walk into wherever we go, people need to see the fire of God burning inside of us. We're living in interesting times, facing challenges none of us expected to face this year or even in our whole lives. But we have the power to touch lives just because of our love for Jesus. I love this. Listen to this. The world is changed by our example, not our opinion. The world is changed by our example, not our opinion. Will the people who are surrounded by you be better because of it? Will they experience a touch of God through you? Someone who spends time with Jesus is someone surrounded by him. Someone surrounded by Jesus shares Jesus. Someone surrounded by Jesus shares Jesus. When last did you tell somebody about Jesus? May his presence go before you and behind you and beside you, all around you, within you. He is with you and he is for you. We love you, and there is nothing that you guys can do about it. God bless you.